Would you please welcome Naomi Shihab?
Thank you so much, Ms. Salmonen, my longtime friend. We have known each other a long time in different countries, and I feel very lucky to come here today to see you. Thank you for welcoming me, and thank you for everything you did to invite me here. Your school is beautiful. It's really, really lovely school. I was happy to arrive on Friday night and have a chance to walk around the campus. It was very quiet Friday night, and then this weekend we had a chance to take some walks in Guangzhou as well as in the park next door and around here. It's a beautiful area. I'm so happy to be back in China. I was here 6 years ago in China, and to meet all of you this morning. Thank you for being here. When I travel, I carry all my tools that I really need to be a writer in my pocket, and this is it. It's the same tools I carried when I was 7 years old, a different notebook, but the same tools. I do have a computer now, as many of you here have. We have the same computer, in fact, it looks like. But this is what I've really used and needed all my life as a writer. I want to thank your teachers for the good work they're doing with you, with reading and writing. And I want to mention that every one of you is smarter than I am because you speak 2 languages, right? Or more? Raise your hand if you speak 2 languages. You're smarter than I am. In my life, I studied 3 other languages: Arabic, Spanish, and German, and I don't speak any of them. I understand things, but I don't speak them well. And I know how difficult it is to learn new languages in addition to your first language. So I respect you for studying in English and for having more than 1 language already in your mind, in your heart, in your notebook. You have twice as many tools having 2 languages. And I know some of you have more languages than you have more and more tools. I started writing poems when I was 6 years old, in 1st grade. I was very nervous in 1st grade. It wasn't an easy year for me. But when I wrote my first poems, I felt peaceful. I felt happy, like I had a home in 4 lines on a page. I could write down something that I thought and go away and come back, and it was still there on the paper. This made me feel better. And when I would give a poem to my teacher or my friend, and they would say, "I understand. I know what you mean." That was the most wonderful thing that happened to me in 1st grade. Someone else saying, "I know what you mean," just because they read a few lines that I wrote on a paper. That's how I became a writer. I felt that year, this is what I want to do and what I will do in my life. But I also felt anyone can do this. It's so easy. It's so cheap. This is all you need, a few pieces of paper. My father and my mother came from 2 different countries. Some of you may know this from looking at my work. My father came from Palestine, from Jerusalem, Al-Quds in Arabic. He was born in Jerusalem. He learned English when he was a boy. When he was 14 years old, he started working for the BBC in English. And he told us this when we were little. You know, when I was 14, I worked for the BBC radio. I couldn't believe this. He loved words, he loved language, and he came to the United States when he was 21 as a university student. My mother was American. Her ancestors were from Germany and Switzerland. And she had been born right in the middle of the United States. She only spoke English, but she also loved words. And the fact that my two parents would even meet still seems like a miracle to me, that these two people would even meet in the world. When I grew up, it was an interesting house, first in St. Louis, then in Jerusalem, then in Texas, where I still live now. Our house was always filled with people from different countries, many languages, many backgrounds. Because my father became a newspaper journalist, he always wanted to interview everyone. He would have people come over and feed them and then ask them a lot of questions. And I think for me, that helped me feel more curious. I knew there were lots of stories in the world. I knew that people spoke different languages, had different religions, had different backgrounds, but everybody was interesting. And I think that helped me want to look at the world. When I was 7, I went to the school library every day. At lunchtime and after school, I always went to the library. On Saturdays, I went to the library in our town. When school was closed, I went to a different library. And it was my school librarian who told me, you could send your poems out. You could send them to a magazine. Who knows? Maybe one would be printed. So that's what I started doing when I was 7 years old, getting envelopes. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have computers. Getting envelopes, getting stamps, and sending my poems to magazines that my school librarian told me would read work written by children. She said, you will have to be very patient because not all of your poems or stories, I also liked writing stories, not all of them will be printed if you send them out. You will be very lucky if one thing out of 20 things is printed. And I remember saying, that's fine. I can be patient. I have 20 things. I can do that. So I started when I was 7, and I was never shy about sending poems out. My idea became, if a poem is printed, maybe someone far away whom I never met, my secret friend out in the world, might read it. After I sent 8 poems, my first one was accepted. It was written about my cat. And I think my second poem that was accepted was written about my friend who was moving away, someone in my class. But my first poem was about my cat that was printed. That's what I did all my life till now, sending work out about all different kinds of subjects. And I thank you very much for reading some of my pieces. Last summer, I met a woman from China who teaches Chinese language studies at Stanford University in California. And when she heard I was coming here, she offered to translate 3 poems. She said, send me 3 of your poems and I'll translate them. And so I think some of you may have seen the poem Shoulders, which I have in English now and in Mandarin, and I'll read the English version of it. And I'll tell you where this poem came from. I was walking down the street in Texas, and I was carrying our son, and he fell asleep. He was 3, maybe 4 years old. He was getting very heavy, but he fell asleep, so I needed to carry him home. And then while I was carrying him, it started raining, and I didn't have an umbrella, so I was walking very fast, carrying a heavy person sleeping, and I saw another man carrying his son, also in the rain, and suddenly this poem it came into my mind, and I went home, put my son in his bed, dried my face, and sat down and started writing this poem, Shoulders. A man crosses the street in rain, stepping gently, looking 2 times north and south, because his son is asleep on his shoulder. No car must splash him. No car drive too near to his shadow. This man carries the world's most sensitive cargo, but he's not marked. Nowhere does his jacket say, "Fragile, handle with care." His ear fills up with breathing. He hears the hum of a boy's dream deep inside him. We're not going to be able to live in this world if we're not willing to do what he's doing with one another. The road will only be wide. The rain will never stop falling. Sometimes I think about how with a poem, you're looking inside into your own experience. Like I could hear my son breathing. I couldn't hear his son breathing, but I could hear my son breathing, and I could imagine looking out, seeing another person. I didn't know him, I didn't know his son, that he could hear that too. Every parent hears their own child breathing. And because I saw someone doing something I could understand, because I was doing it too at the same moment, I don't even know if he saw me. It makes no difference. Suddenly, a poem started happening in my mind. Also, I was thinking about boxes, how boxes often have labels on them: fragile, handle with care, don't drop this box. But people don't. And we're more fragile, right? Children are very fragile, and they're not marked. So that's where the poem came from, looking outside, looking inside at the same time. And really, I think this same kind of experience happens to every one of you over and over again every single day you live. It's not just special for writers. It belongs to you. It's your life, what you see, what you think about. Yesterday, over in the park, we saw the most amazing thing. I'm curious if you have seen this. It's those little carts that have people and animals attached to them like a little statue, and they turn the cart on, and the little statue starts walking and pulls the child in the cart. Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't even know what to call it. It's like a little rickshaw with a machine, but a character, like a small statue, pulling it. This does not exist in the United States. I have never seen this before in any country. I took some pictures of it, and I sent the pictures to my husband, along with pictures of the pagoda and the temple and the beach and all these other things, beautiful things around here. And he wrote me back and said, "I love those little monkey people pulling the carts. That's amazing. I never saw anything like that either." He's traveled in China, but he didn't see that here. So to me, that's something that I noticed because it was very unusual. You might see it and not even think about it because you saw it before. Now, sometimes something catches your attention and it's very simple. Other people know all about it. They've seen it many times. They wouldn't even think about it. We don't have to look far to find something really worth writing about. We only have to pay attention to it. Now, when I went to school, every year, all of my teachers said, "Pay attention." Do your teachers ever say that? All of my teachers said, "Please listen." Do your teachers ever say that? These are the two best things for being a writer or being an artist. The teachers were right. They were always right. Paying attention and listening, and you will have what you need to tell a story, to write a poem, to make a beautiful picture, if you pay attention to what's right around you. But you know what I've found out is many people are just waiting for something better, something bigger to happen. They're not looking right around them, what's already there. So I feel very happy and lucky to be a writer because most writers know it's all here. It's in those little monkey people rickshaws, those children laughing. It's everywhere around us, every single day. You don't have to look very far. It's in your friend's face, your friend's voice, your backpack, your drawer, your table at home, your desk. It's all around you, the things you could write about. So I like poems best. Poems are short. Some of the greatest poems in the whole world that people love are ancient poems from China. Whatever country I travel in, it seems somebody always talks about ancient Chinese poems. This country has one of the greatest legacies of poetry that has ever existed in the world. I started reading Du Fu poems when I was maybe 15. I still read them. I love them. Contemporary Chinese poems, all kinds of subjects, all kinds of styles. I'm carrying poems in my bag written in Sheko on Friday by very young Chinese poets. This country has such a great history with poetry, but every country in the world has a history with poetry. My father's country of Palestine had many, many great poets who have often written about difficult situations they were living through. The United States has many poets who write. Every place I've ever been in the world has poetry, has a history of poetry. It belongs to everybody. I've been in some places, like way north in Alaska, where poetry remains more an oral tradition. People don't write it so much, but they say it, they talk it, and they carry it. They hear it from their grandmother to their mother, their father, to them. Poetry lives everywhere, and I'm so glad it does because it helps us look at our lives and realize we are rich. We are rich with detail and experience and description and memory. And sometimes when you write it down, you just think of more things that you could write. I'll read a couple of very short poems from this book called Honeybee. Maybe some of you read a couple of these. Every day I write down little things that happen and or little things I listen to. And here's one. Wait a second. To mark them all. Where are my papers? Okay. Here's one that was spoken by one of our neighbors she was 99 years old. And it's called Every Day. This is strange. Am I looking in the wrong book? I am looking in the wrong book. That's my problem. Sorry. Here it is. The better book. Every Day. But because she was very excited about turning 100, she wanted to be 100. In the poem, I make a small lie. I say she's 100. But really, she was 99, and she died 2 months before her 100th birthday. But in the poem, I let her be 100. Every day. My 100-year-old next-door neighbor told me, every day is a good day if you have it. I had to think about that a minute. She said, every day is a present someone left at your birthday place at the table. Trust me, it may not feel like that, but it's true. When you're my age, you'll know. 12 is a treasure, and it's up to you to unwrap the package gently. Lift out the gleaming hours wrapped in tissue. Don't miss the bottom of the box. Now, really, she said that to our son when he was 12. That's why she said 12 is a treasure. But when I wrote the poem, I pretended like I was still 12, listening to her, because it was too complicated to say she says it to someone else and I'm listening. So I just pretended she was saying it to me. And that's the kind of thing that I write in my notebook every day. Feeling wise. Now, this comes from reading the newspapers. My father used to say, read newspapers closely. There are many good stories there. There are many things to ask questions about. Notice the headlines. Are they good headlines? Do they fit the story? Feeling wise. A lady was quoted in the newspaper. It is not so hard to feel wise. Just think of something dumb you could say, then don't say it. I like her. I would take her gingerbread if I knew where her house was. Julia Child, the famous chef, said, I never feel lonely in the kitchen. Food is very friendly. Just looking at a potato, I like to pat it. Staring down, you feel tall. Staring into someone else's eyes, you're not alone. Staring out the window during school, you become the future, smooth and large. Do you agree? Is food friendly? Yes, food is very friendly. So sometimes when I read something in the newspaper, I write it in my notebook. Every day, I write questions in my notebook. How many of you have questions every day? Raise your hand. About anything. About your studies, about your friends, about the world, about China, about your computer. Okay. Every day, I recommend this. Get in the habit of just writing maybe 3 questions in your notebook. By the way, this is a notebook for 2 weeks only. This is a China notebook. And if I finish it, I have another notebook. But this notebook will be full very quickly. Every day, a few questions. And then write down some little details, just a list. Some little things you saw or heard or remembered or ate or noticed that day. And then you can write also any other thoughts you have. But if you just get in the habit of writing 3 questions and a small list of details, every day your notebook will start doing interesting things. When you look back at it, you may start noticing connections and threads. Someone told me, I never realized I cared so much about birds until I started writing in a notebook. I realized every day I wrote something about a bird. Every day I wondered about a bird. Every day I remembered a bird. I never even knew I cared about birds until I looked back in my notebook. When you read back, your notebook will give you all kinds of thoughts of what you could write. And then, when you need to write something for school or for anything, for a test, for a letter, for a report, you will be warmed up. It's like exercising. You will have an easier time, a better relationship with your writing because you're writing all the time, little things. You don't have to take a long time to do that. Maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes to write in a little notebook every day. That's the best advice I can give you. Also read as much as you can. Keep discovering new authors, new stories. And poems are good to read because they're so short. You can read a poem, then read it again. You can write a poem and put it in your notebook. Is that the sound of a poem landing on your campus? A big poem is coming down. You can read a poem and carry it with you. I was reading a poem. When I see you again in your classes, I may read a poem to you that I've been carrying about onions, written in China centuries ago. Such a simple poem about onions, but a beautiful poem. A poem about courage and winter and onions in a basket and friends giving gifts. It's so simple, but it has survived centuries. You have very kind, listening faces. So when I look at you, I think you are very good listeners. And just know that to be a poet or to be a writer, you're already doing it. I'm not doing anything different from what you're doing. I'm just going to my notebook more often to write little things down. I met a puppy last night. Have any of you seen the puppy Oliver yet? He is very, very cute. Oliver. And what's Haley's last name? I don't know. Ms. Well, it belongs to one of your teachers. That's not it. And that's a big sound. And this morning, I started writing about Oliver, the puppy, and I only met him once, but I hope to see him again. And I know you will be seeing him, you'll meet him, and you'll get to know him better than I get to know him. You'll get to see him grow. I won't get to see that. But there was something about meeting him, and I said to Miss Haley, his owner, "How long did you have him?" And she said, "1 day." But already he loved her. Already he knew her more than he knew the other people. So to me, there's something here that's so beautiful. I wanted to write this down. 1 day. To have a relationship of 1 day, and already this little puppy knows who to run to when you put him on the ground, runs to her. So he's not my puppy, but I can write about him. I can notice him. You don't have to own the things you write about. You just have to notice them. And there are so many of them. All my friends at home right now are writing me emails saying, "China, you are so lucky. I wish I was in China. I always wanted to go to China." And every day when I wake up here, I feel surprised in my mind to think, I'm in China. I'm so lucky. I don't have that same feeling when I wake up in Texas because I live there a lot. I know it. And sometimes I have to remind myself, go outside, take a walk, work in the garden, go look at the neighborhood, see what's out there. It's easier maybe when you're in a new place because everything seems interesting. But when you're in your own place, every day you can ask yourself, what did I see today? What would I like to carry with me? What detail would I like to keep? So I'll say one poem to close, but I thank you very much for listening so kindly to me. And I wish you all lives that are full of many wonderful things and also poetry, because poetry and writing and language and story will help you do everything else in your life. And I think it also helps us know each other from country to country. You can feel like you have a friend in a country you've never even been to if you read a poem or a story from that place and you like it. So I'll read a poem for my father, and it has some very simple images in it. It has a pillow, and it has a horse and coffee, and I think I'm having trouble finding things because of holding a microphone. Wait, 38. And it's very short. It's called red brocade. And brocade is just a kind of shiny cloth, probably from China. Arabic, oh no, wait, that's not it. Wait. When I was growing up, we had one pillow in our house that was made of red brocade. Only one, and it was the best pillow. Red brocade. The Arabs used to say, when a stranger appears at your door, feed him for 3 days before asking who he is, where he's come from, where he's headed. That way, he'll have strength enough to answer. Or, by then, you'll be such good friends, you don't care. Let's go back to that. Rice, pine nuts. Here, take the red brocade pillow. My child will serve water to your horse. No, I was not busy when you came. I was not preparing to be busy. That's the armor everyone put on to pretend they had a purpose in the world. I refuse to be claimed. Your plate is waiting. We will snip fresh mint into your tea. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.